Hello everybody, Dagmar Bryant, Mindset and Transformational Coach, coming to talk to you today about knowledge and your mindset. Knowledge can be such a powerful thing. Now when I say knowledge, some of you might automatically think, oh, it's got to do with education. But no, not necessarily. It can just mean being on top of things where others might try and get away with stuff that they shouldn't be. Let me give you a couple of examples. I had a friend of mine contact me yesterday and she was telling me about getting out of a lease. Now her lease arrangement about terminating the lease, she was under the impression that she had to give 1 month's notice, which she did. And she wrote a letter to the agent saying, I hereby give 1 month's notice. The agent came back and said, your lease agreement actually says you have to give 1 month's notice from the date of your next pay cycle. So from when the next rent was due. Now for her, because she had only just paid the rent, it actually meant that it almost equated to about 2 months. And I said to her, that doesn't sound right. Like, I've never heard of this. Why don't you go back and check what your rental agreement says? Lo and behold, she called me back a little bit later and said, Dagmar, you're not going to believe it. It doesn't say anything about terminating the lease. There's nothing in it. I said, well, that sounds like a bit of a mistake on their part. Why don't you go back and query that with them and say, look, whereabouts in my lease agreement is it? Now, she hasn't heard back yet, but I'm figuring that it's going to go through with the 1 month's notice because there's been an error on their part. See how a little bit of knowledge has been able to save her potentially a lot of heartache, a lot of grief, and even up to 1 month's rent because someone thought that they were giving her information which she wasn't even entitled to have to pay. So knowledge is power. I know of another example, and this happened to a friend of a friend in the USA. This was a guy working for the emergency services, and he basically wanted to go on vacation, as they say in the USA. And so he got permission to go and he booked his trip, had booked a nice trip with hotel, accommodation, all sorts of stuff. And a week before he was due to leave, they said, no, you can't take your holidays. And he said, well, you've authorized this and I've paid, a heap of money for this trip. And they said, well, you can't go. We need you here because someone else is going on that holiday at that time. And he said, but you authorized this before you authorized the other person. Surely you need to work this out. No, they didn't want to listen to that. And they basically said, if you go, then we'll have you, we'll sue you for leaving your place of employment, basically. And they got away with it because he thought, look, I'll just play nice. I'll be on the safe side. And after a while, he said, look, I'm going to be leaving. And his contract clearly said you have to give 2 weeks notice. So he gave 2 weeks notice and they pull out this clause again. It's deserting your workplace. You have to stay until we get another person in to replace you. You can't just leave after 2 weeks. Well, he finally got some legal advice and, in that particular instance, it did go to court and he won. I'm not saying that in every instance you have to go to court and you have to fight that hard for your rights, but I am saying to you that a little bit of knowledge can save you a whole lot of grief. Now, not everybody wants to read employment contracts and rental agreements, but it's actually in your interest just to understand some very basics. It's something so simple like going to the shops. Now, I know each country does this slightly differently, but when I came here to the UK, I found out that if they charge you incorrectly for an item and it scans incorrectly, that they have to actually give you back double the difference. I know in Australia it is entirely different, because what they do is you get one item for free if it's been scanned in correctly, and all the other items you get at the correct price. But it's useful to know, because that little example for Glenn meant that he got a 6-pack of beer, I think for about £1.50, because it had scanned in correctly and they had to give him double the difference. He was pretty happy with that result. I'm just saying to you, mindset and knowledge. Get yourself into that frame of mind that a little bit of knowledge can be really, really useful for you and can help you in a lot of ways. If you can't do it yourself, maybe you do know of someone who has a legal background, someone who does have a lot of experience in those kind of areas. Maybe a friend or a family member, that would be helpful as well. But get yourself some knowledge just so that you can get through life without being screwed over by people who sometimes they do it deliberately and sometimes they don't. Either way, you don't want to be the person at the end of being caught out. Mindset and knowledge, it's such a powerful way of moving yourself forward and not getting caught out. I'm going to leave you with those thoughts today. Thank you so much for listening. Talk to you again tomorrow.